most people don't realize, and I don't want to be too doom and gloom, but it's the reality. The lifespan of a cheetah is 10 years. 1 decade is a generation. So anything we do for cheetahs, we need to move just like a cheetah. We got to be quick. When we sit back on our laurels too long, and I mean, we do need to do that as a part of science. We need to reflect, we need to take in data, but we have to do things quickly because we're always 10 years away from total extinction of the cheetah.
Welcome to another episode of Animals, Nature, and You. I'm your host, Rick Schwartz, and as always, I am very glad you're here. And I do want to say welcome. We have a lot of new listeners as this podcast continues to grow. People are sharing it, talking about it, I guess, whatever it might be, because we're seeing the numbers go up, so there's a lot of new listeners. So if you are new here, thank you for showing up and being here. I hope you find this episode as interesting as I know it's going to be. And also for those of you who've been around from the beginning of this year, when we first launched Animals, Nature, and You, you have been the foundation of this podcast. Those of you who have been sharing this, whether it's an episode you find interesting and you want to share with someone who thinks it might be interesting also, or whatever you've been doing, word of mouth, etc., just being here. We are growing and creating a small community that is excited about the concepts and understanding that we are all connected. This episode today is no different. We're talking about cheetahs. We're talking with Janet Rose-Hinestroza. She was one of the first guests on this podcast when it launched back in January. And in that episode, we talked quite a bit about her background, her experiences learning from wildlife, over 30 years of working with big cats from a wide variety of different zoos and outreach programs, to also then really getting to understand behavior. I got to work with Janet for a while, and I saw her work in action. The episode she was on, we did mention the Cheetah Outreach Trust and that she's working with them now, but she's now officially their advisor and spokesperson, and she is coordinating a couple of events that are coming up in September. So I'm like, hey, Janet, let's get you back on here. Let's talk about the Cheetah Outreach Trust. Let's talk about the events that are coming up. So with that, I ask that you join me in welcoming Janet Rose-Hinestroza, the advisor and spokesperson for Cheetah Outreach Trust. I want to say, Janet, I appreciate you taking the time to be a guest yet again here on Animals, Nature, and You.
I'm so happy to be back. I'm so happy for you. You're such an excellent representative for conservation, Rick. I'm glad that your viewership is taking off and people are enjoying you as much as I always have.
Well, I appreciate that. And by all means, let me reflect right back to you. You're a pretty awesome spokesperson for conservation as well. In fact, stepping into this role as advisor and spokesperson for Cheetah Outreach Trust, when I saw the flyer come up that there are some fundraising events happening here in California, I'm like, Janet, do you have time to pop on? I'd love to not only highlight these events that are coming up in September, but also then talk more about the Cheetah Outreach Trust. And anybody listening right now, this episode did come out in the end of August. If you're listening after these events have already happened, it doesn't mean you can't go find their website or their social media and participate in supporting them. So Janet, take it from here. What's going on? What do we have coming up here in September?
Oh, it's really exciting. So Dion Sillers, who's the conservation manager for Cheetah Outreach Trust in South Africa, is making his American tour. So he's in the United States for a couple of weeks, and he travels around like crazy, trying to hit a lot of the larger accredited institutions, meeting people in the private sector as well, and definitely trying to get people up to speed on what we are doing for cheetah conservation and why cheetah conservation is such a flagship species for conservation in general. It's why cheetahs are so near and dear to me, because if there was ever a savable species, and certainly a savable predator, it is the cheetah. There's so much we can do to positively impact the cheetah. And so that's what this is all about. So when Dion comes out, and since I'm newly working on the board with Cheetah Outreach Trust and very excited to do so because I've been a huge fan of Dion for a couple of decades now. Amazing guy. And it's everybody's opportunity to come out. I said, hey, let's host a couple of special events where we can invite the general public to come in and find out what this is all about and get to meet Dion and get to hear about the really good work that's being done through Cheetah Outreach Trust. So we have an event in La Jolla. So for everyone in San Diego, I invite them to join us in La Jolla on Thursday, September 10th. We're going to do an evening for wild cheetahs from 5 to 7 p.m. at a beautiful venue. And we're going to feature some South African wines, some South African small bites. And Dion, of course, is going to talk to the group about what we are doing for cheetah conservation and how they can get involved. And there's so many different levels of involvement. I'm excited to talk about some of those for people today, but to come to that event and meet the man and hear about the work firsthand and see some of the work that we're doing, that's a great time. And, who doesn't like food and wine, and who doesn't like Wood? So,
Exactly,
gosh,
right? And I will
right?
I will just jump in and say real quick too, for anyone who's never gone to one of these events, we can be online on social media, we can see these things, and we can be moved to do something. But when you're in the room with someone who is doing that work hands-on, day in and day out, and you have the opportunity not only to hear their stories, but ask questions and get to know them, it is that much more compelling, I think, to step up and be a part of that and support that. So I really encourage anybody in the San Diego, Orange County area, head to La Jolla on September 10th. And then the other event is where?
That's in Northern California. So if you're one of my Northern California peeps, Santa Rosa, Sonoma County, we're working with the Redwood Empire Food Bank for that event, which is so exciting. I mean, bringing together communities and carnivores, trying to have the success of both of those things. It's a great marriage. And the Redwood Empire Food Bank does such impressive work feeding 60,000 individuals in that area every single week, working with other organizations to get food out. And the way that they do that these days is impressive as well. So we're going to be at their food bank site. And so individuals that come to that event, which is a very limited number of people. So if you're up in Northern California, you're interested in getting involved in that community, interested in finding out about cheetah conservation, please go online and grab up your tickets before they're gone, because they're probably pretty close to gone right now. And that's also going to be an evening featuring food and wine. What's really amazing about that one is that the Redwood Empire Food Bank has hired a high-level executive chef out of San Francisco to work for them.
Wow.
And it was impressive why they did it, because these donation barrels all over for like, hey, leave us some food and we give it to the food bank and we'll get it distributed. That's not a great turnaround for their investment. For every dollar people spend giving it to the food bank, they can turn that into $3 worth of food. So it's an interesting idea of, do I give money or do I give food? But they want to be inclusive of, what can you give, and you want to be involved, so let's do it. But they would get things like a 50-pound bag of oats. And how are they going to distribute that? So they hired the chef to make a recipe, make a meal out of it, give people the recipe cards, and facilitate people's ability to cook and see, what is this item? Do I like it? Things like bok choy, things that might be unfamiliar to people. He'll do a special menu with it. They'll deliver it to people that are in line to utilize the food bank. Here's a meal utilizing some of the foods that you can choose from, and here are recipes, and this is what it tastes like, and do you like it? So I just thought that was so innovative and amazing. And so the Redwood Empire Food Bank, again, is going to sponsor us. Dion will be there. He'll be able to speak to those folks about the incredible work that he does to save the beautiful cheetah.
That's awesome. I love that so much. It's what we're really finding is powerful for conservation, is bringing community together, whether it's community to support and raise funds from all levels, or supporting the community of those that live amongst the animals. We're hopefully going to stave off any sort of loss of habitat or loss of life.
Absolutely.
And so that kind of segues into the next side of this. Of course, you were, like we mentioned before, you were a guest earlier in the year, and we talked a lot about your history, your work as a cat trainer, knowing cheetahs so well, all of the work you did. We talked also a little bit about the Cheetah Outreach Trust, but I want to really dive into it. And I want to make sure my audience, because I know we have a lot of new listeners over the last few months too, what exactly is Cheetah Outreach Trust? If they were to go to one of these talks or decide to support via a donation online, what are they supporting? What are you guys doing?
Great. It's an organization based in South Africa to protect free roaming cheetahs. So, there's 4 different populations of cheetahs that we can look at in the world, really. And we're looking at South Africa. It's the same kind of breakdown. You can look at cheetahs that are in institutions like zoos, right? You can look at cheetahs that are within wildlife parks, protected fenced parks that are managed. You can look at cheetahs that are within private sanctuaries, and then there's the free roaming wild cheetahs. Now, cheetahs are a unique species because they do best as free roaming. It's very important to have parks. I'm a huge advocate of parks. But in Africa in particular, managed parks, especially fenced managed parks, I like to refer to these as the gated communities. And you know who does really well in these upscale gated communities? High-level predators like lions and leopards. And you know who doesn't fare so well when they're living in the same gated community with lions and leopards? Are cheetahs. Now, they can coexist with those animals. Absolutely. Of course they do. I mean, Darwin's proved that. It's been happening for centuries. So they can do that. But when the proximity is smaller, and it's hard for us to even imagine because small areas in Africa are 10,000 acres. That's a tiny, tiny area, right? I mean, these are huge expanses of land. But when cheetahs cannot range out of the habitat where they are dealing with those predators who are so good at stealing from them, and rightfully should, it makes their livelihood easier to steal from them, then they don't do well. And cheetahs also, as you know, Rick, from your career in zoos, they're not prolific breeders. They are very particular about how they breed, when they breed. There's a very high mortality rate of cheetah cubs. So again, when cheetahs can't move out and move away from these gated community groups of higher level predators, it definitely shows a big impact and lack of their genetic diversity, more disease transmission, and just wildlife conflict, period, for cheetahs. So free roaming cheetahs are the largest populations of cheetahs. And it's important that we maintain those for their livelihood, because again, they just don't compete as well inside those park systems. And they
And
don't in captivity settings either. They're not as well.
right, right. And so when we look at the work of Cheetah Outreach Trust, we are looking at a group of people that are focused on supporting these animals that are in the free range areas, which, to just make sure the audience understands and knows, the free range areas around Africa are getting smaller and smaller. Just like we see in other parts of the world, their human population's growing, villages and towns are growing, agriculture's growing, roads are growing. So we're seeing fragmentation of habitat. So as time moves forward, there's more and more challenges for these free-ranging areas as they become a little more congested with other things. What is some of the work that Cheetah Outreach Trust is doing to help support these animals in the free-range areas?
Well, they just completed a census that was long overdue to actually count how many free roaming cheetahs that there are.
Oh,
They
wow.
did, yeah. I mean, it was a huge undertaking. It's been the last 6 years a huge all-out effort of the very small group of people that work for Cheetah Outreach Trust, all of their boots on the ground, so to speak, covering almost 100,000 square kilometers of habitat that they put in a grid formation to be able to look at. Collecting scat, setting camera traps. They collected over 5 million images in these camera traps. So they need to go through those to say, are these the same cheetahs? Are these different cheetahs? All of the information that we were going on prior to this census being completed this year, and it just came out in June. And so that's what Dion at these talks on September 10th in La Jolla and September 11th in Sonoma County, this is going to be the big focus of his conversation to people of what we found out from this latest census. And of course, there's some bad news. We kind of knew it. We were basing all numbers on projections from previous census, and those censuses were over 20, almost 30 years ago. So have we really kept up with, as you were suggesting, the population growth, the infrastructure of these areas? Is this a true reflection of how cheetahs would be living today? And of course, we were pretty far off the mark in using those old projections. The growth was very different than what was guesstimated 30 years ago. And so we come to realize, even though there are these projections of, well, in South Africa, there should be somewhere between 300 and 600 free roaming cheetahs. No, there's 83 individual cheetahs, 83 adults. That's it. And there are more with cubs, but as you know, there's a very high mortality rate with cubs, almost 90%. It's really more like 1 in 3 in South Africa, but still, it's a very high mortality rate with cubs. So we definitely count the adults. They're existing, they're on the ground, they have ranges, they're trying to reproduce. Those are animals that we can rely on. They're cubs, they have that very important 2 years of time with their mother where she's teaching them to be such a specialized hunter. I mean, they're really going to the University of Cheetah with Ma and learning a very specific way to hunt, unlike the other cats. And so mom really has to get them to that 2-year mark before we go, okay, you're a mature adult and you're going to have your own range. And now you're going to try to find somebody to breed with and create more cheetahs, which is really where, we're going to get that population survival from. So the census, looking at that data, was also able to say, not only is the cheetah population lower than we were projecting, which we kind of could have picked out, but also through the scat that we collected, there was this great information component of 0% of any of the wild cheetah scat contained livestock in their feces. And that's huge, because the major conflict that we work with at Cheetah Outreach Trust is working with farmers who are raising livestock, who are probably disproportionately blaming cheetah for their livestock loss. And lo and behold, we can say, yeah, from what we collected, that data is true. Now, we're not saying that farmers don't have livestock loss due to cheetahs. We do know that happens, and we want to support the livestock farmers in appropriate management practices and best practices that are affordable for them and manageable for them, because we know that people have to win for cheetahs to win. People have to be the successful species first. If we aren't realistic about that as the goal, we're not going to save anything. And so that's what Cheetah Outreach Trust is all about. We breed guard dogs, we place guard dogs for free, we listen to the farmers in the areas. What are they trying to accomplish? What do they need to accomplish those things? We work with them to get them their resources. And in turn, hopefully they give us a phone call. If they're seeing a cheetah on their property and they're saying, I think this animal is a problem, we can help them to, in certain situations, trap that cat, to put a radio collar on that cat, to actually watch the movements and record the movements of that cat, make sure that the cat is vaccinated, make sure that, we're taking important data for cheetah conservation on our end about how is that cat surviving, what is it doing, and then give it back to the farmer and say, we can report to you that this is what's happening with this cat, and we can give you these resources to help protect you and your livelihood, and hopefully put you ahead of your target for success as a farmer in the area.
And just to be clear, this is across the country of South Africa.
It is. We're primarily focused in a region of northern South Africa, right outside of Kruger National Park, one of the huge gated communities, right? And in that area, we see free roaming cheetahs going in and out of Botswana to South Africa, and in and out of Namibia, cheetah capital of the world, in South Africa. So these are really important populations, and we need to support them. And this is where it gets to, and we talked about this the last time. I look at the major cheetah conservation groups in Africa, like the late night hosts of tonight's talk shows. We're all friends. We all support each other. There's enough for all of us to go around because we need to work together. Right. We have our own unique challenges in the areas of Namibia, Botswana, Kenya, South Africa, and our cheetahs have different challenges in those areas, but we need all of these cheetahs to survive. We want wildlife corridors between these places as much as possible so that we can keep up a more diverse population, a healthier classification of animals. And again, segues of people and animals coexisting that make sense. People can travel where they need to travel to, and so can the cheetahs and other wildlife without getting hit by cars, causing injury to humans as well as death to wildlife, right? So this is a win-win on every level.
I want to go back to what you had mentioned in the sense of prior to me asking just to confirm location so everyone kind of has an idea of where the work that your group is doing is focused. And yes, clearly everyone works together. So at least clear to you and I, but I'm glad you mentioned that for anybody listening or watching who may not realize that. I do want to go back to what you said, though, about all the work that goes in. If someone reports there's a cheetah in my area, I think it's going to be a problem. You talked about collaring it. You talked about vaccinations, tracking, all these things you listed that go into that one person saying, hey, I think this cat's a problem for my livestock. So what is that in the sense of, is it a team of people? Is it just Dion and one other person? Is it a group of rangers? Like, what are we talking about? What does that look like? And I ask that because I want people to get a clear picture when they support Cheetah Outreach Trust. I want them to have a clear picture as to what they're supporting. Where's that dollar going?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's a pretty small band of people. It's a very small band of people. And so and Dion is at the helm of it for sure. We're trying to bring in new partners, and specifically we're trying to hire within our group of Cheetah Outreach Trust. We want a community engagement manager to be in this area of northern South Africa, to work within the community on a daily basis. There's weekly farmers markets there, and we want our community engagement officer to be there and to be able to say, how's it going this week? What are you producing? What are your needs? And to make sure that we can speak to those actionable items in a timely way, because our footprint is so small as far as there's only a couple of people doing a whole lot of legwork, and relying on citizen scientists as well. Like we talked about, over 5 million photos from camera trap. Yeah, you can log on and be looking and comparing. We've actually found that humans did a better job than AI of matching the individual animals. This is the same animal, this is not. So that's pretty fascinating. But anyway, there's so many things you can do, and it's a very small number of people. And like you said, it takes a great amount of resource when somebody says, hey, I think that I have a cat that's spending too much time here. I've had some loss. I think it could be this cat. The amount that goes into, is this the right cat? What is their general health and welfare from observation that we can even tell? Is this an animal that does make sense to radio collar? Radio collars are very expensive. The ones that we utilize only weigh 1 to 2% of the animal's body weight, because we're trying to be conscientious that cheetahs need to run 70 miles per hour. We don't want anything to get in their way to be able to hunt their native prey. And most importantly for us as Cheetah Outreach Trust, it's to say, what can we do before the problem starts, right? What can we do for you to manage your resources well? And that goes back to the guard dog program for us. And that's really where Dion started, with breeding Anatolian Shepherds, training these Anatolian Shepherds, putting them on the right farms, free to cost to those farmers, giving them the food they need, giving them the vet care they need, coming back and checking up on how is this dog managing your herd? Are they hitting all the targets that you want? And again, from what we've been able to see of the placement that we've had, and people can go right onto the website and they can look at this. They can see that just recently we placed 5 more puppies with in the area. Yep. And that's a huge investment, monetary investment. Each one of those dogs costs a pretty penny to breed, to raise, to train, to vaccinate. All of those things cost money, and we take on that burden so that it can just be a resource to the folks that are managing their livestock out in these habitats, and giving them a reason not to shoot that cheetah on site, right? So the guard dogs are a huge component. And again, the fact that all the scats that we collected, almost 200 of which none of them had any livestock present in that scat, is huge to be able to tell the ranchers, give it a second. I know when you get up and you're walking your habitat and you're looking, because you've had the loss of a cat, now you're looking, who did that? You are most likely, if you're going to see a wild predator in Africa, when you're walking during the daytime, you're most likely
to see the cheetah.
And so cheetahs get blamed. And many, many years ago, I went to a fascinating talk that was done by Cheetah Conservation Botswana. And they had done this survey and then went out and collected real scientific data to kind of verify. So what does each predatory species present as a threat level from 1 to 10? 1 being you're not a threat, 10 being you're a huge problem, right? And cheetahs rated about a 3 on that scale. Now, one of my favorite cats on the planet, the caracal, was 10 plus. They were off the chart. And so again, was it easier to see a cheetah than a caracal? I mean, they're both going to be hard to see, but yeah, no, it probably would be easier to find a cheetah than a caracal. Caracals are smaller. Caracals are a little more cunning. Caracals are going to move more at night. So yeah, it's just really fascinating. And for ranchers to understand, because we get it, that's their livelihood.
Right.
That's their family's livelihood. I mean, it makes perfect sense. This is a classic good and bad, good versus evil, right? But are we really enemies, or where's our common ground? And when ranchers don't know, when these farmers don't know, and they're indiscriminately killing predators, we have the research to back up. You've invited way more volatile predators to come into your territory and now compete for that land. And there's going to be more indiscriminate killing of your livestock because you've opened the floodgates versus having a stable predator who is managing that space and saying, hey, this is my territory and this is what I do within it. And this is how I operate within it. I've kind of figured this out. You get a bunch of new guys, they're kind of knuckleheads and they're trying to figure it out, right? So you might suffer more livestock loss because of that. So these are the things that, again, we first and foremost want to create the relationship with those ranchers and say, your success is our success. So how can we work with you? And it is your land. It's your property. It's your livelihood. What can we do to help you?
I want to go back to the dogs real quick, because I think outside of our circle, the whole dog versus cat thing, and there may be some projections of our culture onto what that means in the wild for a herding dog or a guard dog, the shepherd versus the cheetah. What does the shepherd do, and why does that work with cheetahs?
Excellent question. And I like that you brought up herding dog, guarding dog, because a lot of people get confused. And
right. And there's a difference.
Different. That's right. There's a big difference. Both can be incredibly important and useful to the farmer, right? But they have different purposes. Herding dogs are for herding. They're for moving your animals from one destination to another. That is not what a guard dog does. A guard dog simply lives amongst the livestock and protects them from outside threats coming in. That's it. They're saying, these are my pals. This is my group. You are not allowed to take one, right? And I really love the origination of this idea. How are we going to protect cheetahs? Knowing that there are these huge expanses in Africa. Fencing is not very realistic for most people. It's not cost effective in the way that water moves in Africa. It's not habitat effective either. So we don't like fences. We get it. We can't put barns all over the place on these tens of thousands of acres of land that we have to close up our animals overnight. What are the things that we're going to do? And, Lori Marker, who we've talked about before, she's the director of the Cheetah Conservation Fund in Namibia. She was the first one that went over and said, hey, look, there's got to be an animal that I put out with the livestock that is easy for management, doesn't eat anything too different. It will be out there with those animals. And her first answer were donkeys, because, what's more aggressive than an angry donkey? Like nothing, like zero. And that was really smart of her to think of that. But the problem with the donkeys being the guards is that they really didn't care if a predator came in and killed that sheep, because they were like, I didn't like that sheep either. He just I don't have to talk to him anymore. Fantastic. But dogs, as we know, these fabulous pack animals, they do bond to their pack. It's important to them. They like being the alpha and they want all those subjects underneath them, right? And so the dog does have a vested interest. No, you, spotted cat, you cannot come in here and eat this. This is part of my flock. You can't have it. And the guard dogs aren't even looking to, throw down so much as they're going to stand there with their giant presence. I mean, some of these dogs are almost 200 pounds. These are huge, 160-pound dogs. I worked with a female Anatolian Shepherd at the San Diego Zoo. She was a 130-pound dog. I mean, that's a massive dog. And she was wonderful. Her name was Yeti. Anyway, you can see her online. There are lots of photos. But these dogs just stand there and bark. They don't give chase. That's important, because the predators are very smart. And if you have a herding dog out there, a herding dog will give chase. They move things. I'm going to move you out. You're a problem. Yeah. And things like jackals work together. Hey, today you be the one that gets chased. I'll go in and grab the sheep. Fantastic, right? So you can't have a herd dog. You need to have a guard dog that stands there, intimidating bark, a large presence. I'm staying with my flock. And Anatolians are fantastic at that. They're not great pets. So, Rick, we have to remind our,
yes.
our farmers of that, right?
Yeah.
This is not Lassie. This dog is highly independent. It doesn't want to come inside the house with you. It wants to be out there with its flock. It wants to manage its flock. And that's how we want their mentality to be, because that
Right.
makes them very effective at what they do. You can go get your Lassie and you can have your family dog. It's not going to impede what our guard dog is going to do for you. Just know they're not the same animal. They're different. They're serving different purposes. And they're both speaking to their purpose. There are plenty of dogs that want to go in your house with you. But guard dogs, they want to guard the flock. So let them do it.
And just to add on to everything you've just said, for anyone listening who might be thinking, well, wait a minute, cheetahs are like these big predators with big sharp teeth and all. How can a dog scare them off? Just real quick, cheetahs rather not have confrontation. They aren't built for confrontation. They're built for speed. So the idea that there's a big 100-plus-pound dog saying you need to leave, they're like, okay, I'll go find some food that's not being guarded by a large dog. So that's why it works so well. It just plays into the mentality of the cheetah not wanting to be confrontational. And that's why it's such a brilliant, brilliant plan that funding goes into supporting these dogs going into these environments, protecting and preventing then the conflict that cheetahs have been blamed for, rightfully so or not. Either way, they're still blamed for it. So it's a brilliant program. I love hearing about this. As we start to get near the end of the conversation here, I want to ask you, Janet, why is it important that we save free-ranging cheetahs? If there's cheetahs in these gated communities and cheetahs in zoos and parks, why is this important? Why does it matter?
I love that question. Most people don't realize, and I don't want to be too doom and gloom, but it's the reality. The lifespan of a cheetah is 10 years. 1 decade is a generation. So anything we do for cheetahs, we need to move just like a cheetah. We got to be quick. When we sit back on our laurels too long, and I mean, we do need to do that as a part of science. We need to reflect, we need to take in data, but we have to do things quickly because we're always 10 years away from total extinction of the cheetah. It's very real. And again, these populations, as we've discussed, whether they are in a protected park, whether they are in a private zoo or an accredited zoo, these are very different populations. The free roaming cheetah has the highest number and the best success viability of all the cheetahs that we're talking about. And I'm still a fan of zoos, but the idea of reintroducing cheetahs, there's a lot involved in that process. So
Right.
It's fine for us to talk about having basically this assurance population from a zoological standpoint, but just to be real, it would be many generations to release cheetahs back into the wild, I should say. And I mean, we just can't even keep the numbers up in managed care enough to be able to say we have the population to put it back out in the wild. We can barely sustain our population in managed care. So these animals are the animals that must be protected. These are also the animals that create the health of the ecosystem. And as you and I know, that goes through everything right back to us, the planet's survival as a whole. So we have the ability to do this for wild cheetahs, as you so well put it. Cheetahs are flight, not fight. Never in history has a wild cheetah, a free roaming cheetah in Africa, attacked a human being. And I can't say that about a domesticated cat. I always follow it up with, please don't try to be the first person attacked by a cheetah. I mean,
Yeah, please don't. Yeah.
In Africa, with trying to take selfies or something, maybe it could happen. It's not likely, but it could. Give them their space. Avoid always and never with wild animals. Anyway, back to the point that these animals, if we can't coexist with this predator, I'm at a loss, Rick. I don't know that we can do it with anything. So I feel so positive about the impact that we can have with these animals, that these animals were created to coexist with us. And so we have a duty to do that. And it's right now, today. There is no time to wait when it comes to cheetahs. Fewer than probably 6,000 cheetahs on the continent of Africa at this point. There's more people that are walking through the San Diego Zoo right now than that, So we really have to make a stand now. We have to understand what we're dealing with. And that, again, this is a union that we can manage. And I'm here for it. So hopefully people come out and support the event.
Yes. So one more time, September 10th in La Jolla, September 11th in Santa Rosa. To find out more information, where can people go?
People should go to cheetahOutreachTrust.org right on the internet, and they can purchase their tickets right there. There's a link that will take you right to the site to do that.
Perfect. And there's social media as well. So I will put all of the links for the Cheetah Outreach Trust, the website, and for social media. And if you're listening to this after the events in September, I still want to encourage people to check it out. Get online, check out what they're doing, see how you can support. It has been conversations I've had with other people in the past, whether it's Southeast Asia, whether it's Africa, wherever. Your $5 you might spend on a nice coffee can go 3 times further when you support these organizations, because the countries they live in, the dollar has that kind of power to make that kind of difference. So even if you're like, well, I can't do much, every little bit helps. So I encourage everyone to go check out that website. And Jen, anything else we haven't touched on you want to make sure people know about?
Oh, thank you so much, Rick, for having me on and for saying that, because it's exactly true. Cheetah Outreach Trust, again, is a small organization that has a huge impact in South Africa for cheetahs. And again, we are creating more reach into the other regions with the free roaming cheetahs. That's our cause, is keeping cheetahs. And again, knowing that goes through the success of the individual farmers, making sure that people come first too, and having a healthy ecosystem with all these amazing animals in nature that we have around us that we just want to appreciate. We can do it. We can live together. And again, that's why I'm an advocate of cheetahs, because if there was ever a carnivore that we can coexist with and we can make a success story out of, it's this one.
Nice. Thank you so much, Jen. I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you too, dear listeners. I appreciate you joining me on this curious odyssey that we call Animals, Nature, and You. The conversation with Jana just reminds me and reinforces the value in what can happen when we get together as a group, as a community, and support each other, support the work we're doing, support people who live in spaces that have that overlap with wildlife. And you know me, I've talked about it plenty already, and I post about it on social media. I'm a big advocate for our own local native wildlife. That being said, cheetahs need help, rhinos need help, orangutans need help. So whatever version of conservation support strikes true to your heart, I encourage you to participate and be a part of it. And if spotted cats that run incredibly fast, who are just gorgeous to observe and know they exist on this planet, if that's what rings true to your heart, I can't say enough about the Cheetah Outreach Trust and how I really want to encourage you to learn more about what they're doing. Even if you're like, cheetahs aren't my thing, I still encourage you to go check it out. I will have all the social media and the links for the websites and everything else, like I had said, that'll be down below in the show notes, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening anywhere on our podcast player. If you also want to get a hold of me, zoologyrick.com is my website, and I will have links to my social media below also. But essentially, that's Zoology Rick on just about every social media platform you can find me on. I do want to remind you also, if you haven't already, please hit subscribe or follow wherever you might be listening or watching, because we have more awesome interviews coming up with amazing people doing awesome work all around the world. We have so much planned. New episodes come out every Thursday that are interviews, and we have restarted our 10-Minute Tuesdays, which are fun, shorter solo episodes where we talk about a species or a current event or something like that that has something to do with animals and nature. So all of that said, I'm going to wrap this up. Have a good one, everybody.